You like data? Raise some hands. Excellent. Okay,
Nice.
This is great. Yes. These are my people. Okay, great. These guys are also my people. They work at companies that are doing the real hard work of making data available to all of us, and that we can rely on them to tell us or give us strongly reasoned opinions on why certain things are happening in Web3. So, without further ado, let me introduce my esteemed guests here. We have Matt from Messari. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Matt is a research lead there. Messari obviously is someone who's changing the game and standardizing how research is done, pulling together a bunch of different sources and producing high-quality research for all of us to consume and make great decisions. So thanks for coming, Matt.
Of course.
Michelle from Allium. Allium, of course, doing all the hard work, cleaning that data, providing excellent data pipelines and sources for all of us to use to build out great analytics. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Awesome. And then Arnaud from Dune, the community platform for all our analysts out there who are building the reports that focus on individual protocols all the way up to cross-chain analysis. And a great place to go build your own reports. So Arnaud, thanks for having me.
Thanks, and welcome to Miami, my home. So happy to have you here.
It's very hot still, very hot. Great, okay, we're gonna kick things off, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you guys have cooking at the end of this.
Love it.
All right, so first question for Michelle. When you think about meaningful activity on chain, what's the first signal you look at apart from these vanity metrics, right? Which are TVL, market cap, raw transaction accounts.
I would say that you have to look at who is really driving the activity and what they're actually doing. So asking the questions of if what I'm looking at is coming from payments or trading, is it B2B or consumer, or real users versus bots are all important questions to consider. I think once you know the actual users and the use cases, then every metric in turn becomes a lot more meaningful, and we start to move away from just vanity statistics to looking at real adoption.
So use cases are critical.
Critical.
Okay, as a product guy, I'm very in tune with that. It's good thinking.
Good use cases
Yeah.
are critical. Yeah.
Matt, Arnaud, any varying opinions on that?
Yeah, no, I think one thing we look at it a lot is repeatability, right? It's just like any business. If people don't come back to your chain, don't come back to your protocol, then those bursts that we see is not really interesting. But are users coming back? So I think there are metrics that you can create, like literally repeatable active users, not just active users. It's the same person coming back within like 30 to 90 days. Like you can build Dune dashboard and like really know if people are coming back. I think use case certainly like very important. I think the type of action matters. So there's a lot of tagging action is actually very hard in on-chain data. We do it at Dune, but it's not that easy. But look at things more like swaps, contract calls, like things that mean a true, I would say, desire to be active on chain, not a desire that's driven by incentives of farming, because that's really a lot of what I think the extra inflation comes from.
Tagging is interesting and a vital piece of what we're all doing here. How do you guys approach that at Dune? Do you find that to be a heavy lift?
Yes, it is. I mean, there are obviously AI. Maybe we'll drive into that conversation that can help you tag things. There is also a lot of manual work, despite being in 2026. Like you have to really understand every chain is different. We have non-EVM, we have EVM. Even sometimes within EVM, things are not exactly the same. So it is we have actually a team at Dune that just does that. We have partners that we work with on the data space, guys like Messari that we're always connected on, like what are you seeing and things like this. But it is not easy in general. And I think the problem in blockchain is like, it's kind of an irony, is like the data is publicly available, but people have different interpretation about it. So, a team like Messari, it's great to work with them because they can put their own like interpretation lenses towards the same data.
Yeah, I mean, just building an example off of that, if you take something like RWAs, right? There could be RWAs that have a lot of real world use case, or there could be an RWA that's really like a BD deal. We added $1 billion in TVL to our chain. So that's where like Messari comes in, we're contextualizing it because you can have data where he said you have different views on it. A marketing team might say, hey, look, we have this blog post. We just did $1 billion in TVL because we have a permissioned RWA that has one like maybe institutional custodian of that RWA. That's really just like printing that RWA on the chain. And then there's something unique that Stellar recently did was with Centrifuge. They launched like wrapped RWAs of US Treasuries. So it's completely composable. It's free to send. It can be used in money markets. And then you're looking at something where like a Messari comes in and we're like, hey, this is different. We're going to contextualize this. This isn't just some BD deal where we added $1 billion in RWA. There's real opportunity for use cases here. And then I think the biggest thing is with the data is like, there's no metric that isn't not valuable. You know, TVL is still valuable, market cap is still valuable, price is signal. But with something like RWA market cap there, you can come in and contextualize it more, and you can triangulate more down, like how many people are using this RWA that's composable in a lending and borrowing market to gain yield or borrow against, et cetera. So I think it's really like from Messari's perspective, just contextualizing the data and providing the insights because there's so many good providers. But it's kind of like setting what people should be looking at to understand that data from our perspective.
I have
Yeah.
a question for you, John.
Oh, wow. Turning the tables.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's my hometown, so I can ask questions.
Please.
So you guys have relatively low TVL in general, but your activity is tremendous, which I think is a good, indicator of sometimes the misunderstanding of that big TVL metric that's out there. From a product marketing, how do you kind of like build value prop and messaging to kind of like change a little bit the dynamic of people that might be focusing just on TVL but not looking at the real activity?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, historically we've
We
been...
did not prepare this, by the way, just FYI.
Well, I'm going to give you an answer. So historically, we were a payments-focused chain, okay? DeFi and smart contracts came into play a little late for us, right? So we are, and I think we've had a really good year in this. We're catching up there. And I think, as you can see, we hit a new high, I believe yesterday, of 200 million TBL. So we're continually making steady gains. The way we position ourselves is that we have this forward-thinking, low latency, affordable network to build on, right? Minimal transaction fees, but we're using this cutting-edge tech where it's always going to be quick, right? So we are allowing for you to come on, use our wonderful open source tooling set, and get up and running quick with all of our resources and I think our great community support. So I think that's where we differentiate ourselves at the moment. Okay, Matt.
Yes.
When you're assessing a chain or any, you know, or a project, for example, what in your mind indicates, or what's a metric that indicates real growth, real activity?
Yeah, I think app chain revenue, just because it's one that can't be gamed for so long and it has a breadth to it. So say there's an incentive program on some aspect of the chain, it's not going to cover all of that. And so I think app chain revenue is signal because TVL you could have spiked by one project and then come down, like Arnaud said. But yeah, I'd look at app chain revenue. I also think for a chain like Stellar, like stablecoin transfer volume, things like that. But I think something we're seeing in the industry right now, even for other chains that want to hone in on stablecoin usage, is I don't know if we're hitting the limit of open data, but I'm hearing from chains like we want to know who or why this transaction volume is happening on our chain because we don't necessarily know why. And that's almost like an intelligence product, not a data product. But those are the two I'd say.
The nature of the data that we're all working with is it's basically a spider web of on-chain and off-chain data. So having those insights, I know from a product perspective, are invaluable. So totally agree. Very important.
I think that's what we need to bring more off-chain data on-chain. When you look at a lot of the DeFi strategies that are happening with Vault and everything, like recently, I think, when we don't know where people are doing in this Vault, potentially like the strategy of the manager, that's where I think the problem happens. So not that everything needs to be on-chain, I think it's not the point, but I think the more that we can drive, when everything is on-chain, we can actually analyzing, query it, as complicated as it is, we can do it. But right now, what's off-chain is really what's preventing a true in-depth analysis.
Right.
I would agree. Michelle or Arnaud, considering you guys are producing or running a product that allows folks to build out their own insights, but you're also building insights yourself, have you noticed the community coalescing on a certain North Star when it comes to measuring, chain health?
Well, we work a lot with institutions, so I think they probably care about different metrics than maybe like retail users that are just looking to invest. I'm going to keep giving the same answer of how much use case matters, but the institutions we work with, like Visa, they care about the quality and durability of the use cases that are tied to real world needs. I think that's because they know that's what other institutions care about, and institutional adoption is where we will see the 100x scale and distribution come from. So when we start seeing institutional behavior on chain, like large settlements that are $10 million plus, or institutions using stable coins on a network as like scaled collateral, I think that's when we know there's like real sustainable health for a network.
Well put.
I think a lot of things that we do recently, I think with enterprises or even government agencies, also going back to the tagging actually, trying to separate transaction of volume that are driven by some form of incentives versus what's not. It's actually, again, a lot harder than it sounds, but when you're able to, I guess, mitigate the noise from the actual activities, so you put away, obviously, bots, airdrop farming, and you can build models on the activity of a chain after the incentive. So if you think about, I don't know, like Starknet, which very high, airdrops, nothing happens afterwards, or things like this. Like institutions are also evolving in their knowledge of blockchain. 5 years ago, they were like, I need one or two high-level metrics, I'm good. Now they are like control centers with things that are like very, very deep and complex. So they go down to transaction levels and really understanding like where are they going to invest and so on and whatnot. So institutions are also getting very, very sophisticated. I think we don't talk enough about that too.
I agree, especially as more folks who are non-crypto native are coming into our world. And there's a well-established set of KPIs that folks in Web 2 are used to having, right? So we're going to have to like meet them somewhere in the middle, for sure. Okay, so we're kind of referencing it. I was supposed to actually discuss this in the beginning, but the whole mic thing threw me off. We're talking about some vanity metrics, right? TVL, market cap, raw transactions, TTL. Of all of those, Arnaud, what do you think could be the most problematic in terms of someone completely relying on that to say, okay, that's the one that we think we're going to peg our next year's goal to?
You mean the one that's wrong? Or?
The one that can be misinterpreted or gamed, for lack of a better word.
Active wallet.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can create wallet, it's free. So that's literally, I think, the worst. Like we have there's a Dune event where someone made a sticker, it was super funny. It says like, are these active addresses in the room with us right now? And it was kind of like the whole point of like, you can create wallet, you can create addresses, and quite often it's still a metric that is being talked about a little bit too much. So I think that's the one that I would stay away out of all the vanity one.
Good to know. Thank you.
I agree. I think we could see like a huge surge in wallets, and it could be, a network that has 100,000 new wallets and it's just an airdrop farmer. So, wallets can be a meaningful metric, but the people providing the data have to also be filtering out for all the spammy activity, which is a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's why app chain revenues signal because
Nice. Wait, bringing it back. It's
Yeah.
wonderful work.
because is that person going to pay for all those fees? Sometimes yes, if it's an airdrop farmer and they calculate it in.
Yeah.
But if it's just complete gaming, no.
Right.
And I think the revenue is actually very good because when you think about it, even from a mindset perspective, like sometimes in crypto, people want stuff for free, and I think it's bad because when you start paying, you see value. Like in crypto, too much stuff is free, to be honest. Like we've made the data for free for too long at Dune, and I think it's like same thing. Like if you pay for something, I think even outside of crypto in real life, you value it the most. So looking at revenues or some form of fees is a very, very healthy metric. Are people willing to come and pay for a product or not?
Yeah, but then there's another issue that I've seen sometimes where there's fights between L1s on X or wherever where someone misrepresents a network like Stellar that isn't trying to derive value for their network from network fees, separate from app chain fees. So there's confusion there. I'd say that's somewhat of a vanity metric at this point too, is network fees when they're being commoditized in the long run.
100% agree. Well put. We got a few more questions here, and then we're going to get into some AI, because everyone loves AI. Okay, so Michelle, and I know some of these sound similar, but I think there's nuance here. What do you think is potentially something that the industry at large misunderstands about growth and adoption? Maybe some, again, chains who are touting kind of what Matt was saying, this metric to prove that they are active and growing and there's engagement in their developer community. What do you think is something that they're maybe tying too much to?
I think a common misconception we often hear is that people assume that a high stablecoin supply or volume automatically equals real adoption. But a lot of the activity there can be from liquidity providers moving inventory or just from general infrastructure flows. So when you look at these numbers, you also have to ask if this is coming from real users or if it's something like treasury operations. So you need to like filter out a lot of that data to get rid of the noise, which is something that we work on at Allium.
Any other thoughts on that?
In what context?
Basically, again, like let's say you guys review all the chains essentially,
Yeah.
right? So like when you're talking to them and you're saying, okay, we're going to do this research project for you, and then they come to you like, well, this is what represents us. Like, do you often have to kind of correct them and say, well, maybe that's not the best story for you to tell, or?
I don't think so. I mean, I would just circle back kind of separate from what you're framing. At the end of the day, like I think these dashboard providers need to focus on tailoring it more to insight, their dashboards to insights rather than just number go up. It seems like all the dashboards today are built in a way that don't provide insights built into the dashboard. It's just the presumption that
As long as it goes up, people are happy.
But the
That's
problem that we're talking about, right, is that there's no context for that, or it might not actually be meaningful.
Right.
So an example is when I was doing a report for Stellar, their stablecoin their market cap of total stablecoins on that would go up, 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 down, up, 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 down, and there's no natural insight to that because every dashboard in crypto right now is just built to presume that the insight is that the thing went up and to the right. But there's a lot of unique insights in crypto where that's not the case. So the insight there was not the coolest insight. It was Binance withdrawing and rebalancing USDC across networks. So that's why it was dropping on Stellar. But I think the general issue in the industry, and it's almost making me more bullish on Messari, is that there's just a flood of data, but there's a total lack of like the insights. Obviously, the insights need to be more commoditized. We can't just have analysts like manually mining the insights. But I think there's a builder's opportunity with dashboards to in some way use AI or some form of programmability to like maybe have Boolean logic of like, these are the 5 different possible outcomes of the data, and then here's the insight.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you step out of like we're kind of expert-ish in the room, like we're part of a 1% who can understand. Like even, like imagine what we're talking about, but imagine someone out there, even an institution who's looking at the very macro level. You know, you talk about crypto tagging, and they're like, I don't want to know all about it. I need to, but you know, I need to like maybe have a couple of layers.
Yeah.
But it's very hard for them. Like, you know, they move from a life where they used to be, or they still are in like quarterly earning mindset, right? It's still the case, right? We're not trying to disrupt that. And now they're like in the 24/7, you know, like information, data available. I need to provide that transparency to my investors, you know, my LPs, my GPs, like real time. They're not going to wait for me at the end of the quarter. So it's actually very hard for those institutions to like make that transition. Like it's super hard. Like you have no idea. Like it's like a company transformation. It's not just like we have a digital asset team. Like we're past that stage. It's like the mindset, the culture, investor relation. Like there's so many impact that, you know, with this new financial model that we're trying to build.
Yeah, 24/7 trading is a massive diversion of what we've done for however long, right? So that's a great point, Arnaud. Totally agree. While we're on the subject of AI, let's get into AI for a second here. So there's a proliferation of natural language querying going on in the industry, which can be very helpful, right? We want to attract folks who maybe aren't SQL experts. And by the way, that's probably most folks who are running businesses and things like that, right? But I think there's inherent risk with those tools, but opportunity. So I'll start with Matt. What do you think are the opportunities for this kind of co-pilot technology when it comes to discovering insights using kind of business language instead of having to write code?
Yeah, I think where we're at, just separate from, I'll let them speak to that side, the data side. For the insight side at Messari, we have Copilot, which is just our AI tool that basically takes all of our historical data research and mine insights, mine information from it. I think we're at the spot where we are really good at mining the data and insights from what we already have. I think the next step for us in terms of engineering on our side is what I talked about, like how can we have in real time, like here's the data, here's where the information is now, give us that quality now rather than backdrawing for the analyst or for whoever's querying the information. How can we have it in real time and forward looking? That's where we're at.
And it's taking like the wealth of the research you guys have already done and tailoring it to what the person's asking in real time.
Yes.
Which is great. Which is great.
We have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
She's trying to reach out to you for a long time.
I'm almost done, I swear. This is very. Do you see everyone in this room how engaged they are? We need to get through this. Yes, thank you. Okay. Michelle.
Yes. Well, I think we want to decrease any friction, especially from institutions that might not be like SQL native, to be able to leverage our data. So the AI stuff is a bit newer for us, but it's definitely a big focus. And I think like alongside that, because we're mostly focused on working with institutions, we're also focusing a bit more just on the research side as well to surface the narratives that we know institutions care about. And then to also like explain our methodology behind the metrics that we're putting out. So I think the accessibility with AI plus us leaning a bit more into like the qualitative side of what's going on chain are like 2 major focuses of ours.
I would agree. I think transparency in how you're calculating and what you're calculating and what you're trying to convey with that metric will become even more important. It's always been really important, but it's even more important now. It's a great point.
Yeah, something interesting we've been doing with like our stablecoin dashboard with Visa is providing unadjusted and adjusted metrics so that you can see how removing internal transfers and like bot activity actually affects metrics. And then we also wrote a white paper with Visa just to like explain the use cases that are actually going on chain.
It's a good one. You guys should check that out. Arnaud, any closing statements on AI?
I mean, we're a billion-dollar company, so we've been pouring money on AI, and we've been fortunate to work with, Entropy, Kreiser, because the first thing when they think about crypto, we're like, okay, we have to talk to Dune. Let's see how we figure it out, the whole AI and crypto data. And I think after a little over 2 years now working heavily into that, our conclusion is that there actually not a way today to actually build a powerful, accurate, let's say LLM, like ChatGPT-like, who can understand on-chain data with depth, period. Anybody that can tell you otherwise, I'm happy to challenge them.
Yes.
It doesn't work. I'm not saying it won't, but as of today, it doesn't work.
It's not possible right now.
So from that conclusion, what we decided to do at Dune, I think to some extent the same at Michel, is like, how can we move some friction on using our data platform? So I think for us, what it means is more like we have an agent that helps you code in SQL, which is like the basic database language. Truthfully, you could do this outside of, our agent. You could do this in Cursor and copy paste your code, but at least it removes a lot of friction. What we are more excited about is how do we leverage AI for two things. The first one is find the right data. So we have 100 chain. We have more data than any companies in crypto. So that's a lot of data. Trying to find the right data set out of tens of millions. If you want like swap on Uniswap v4 hooks for a specific pair, like AI is very good at that. The second thing is actually more preparing our data in the best way that's become the input for someone else, for an agent, whatever agent might mean in this concept. Might not be an LLM, could be a trading agent, could be like a 402 in a future protocol that does this thing with payment on its own. But that's really where we see the best of AI outside of like internal usage as well, is more preparing the data so it can be the best input for another company who's going to build on top of Dune.
Well said. All right, I think that's our time. I want to thank my panelists here. Let's give them a round of applause. They're great. All right. Thanks, guys.